Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the moments that shape purpose, identity, and leadership. Today I'm speaking with Brad Moore, our CEO and strategy partner at TDP Advisor, who help founders build business that creates really long-term values and clear paths for skill or exit. It's really a pleasure having you on the show. Yeah, thank you. So, Brad, what were some of the challenges that shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, there's so many events that happen in one's life that define their character and who they are. And frankly, I've learned from so many mistakes because that those mistakes I think were necessary in just shaping the direction that things have gone. One of the biggest events that happened in my life is at a very young age. I left corporate America to grow a family business. I spent 10 years growing that business, and there were so many decisions made. Just leaving the past life. So many decisions during the growth of that business. But ultimately, once my grandfather passed away, it was really clear that it was time for me to resign and walk away from that business. And I learned so much about what I could have done during that time. I learned so much about how I could have managed things, and frankly, that's one of the reasons why I started the advisory firm is help other owners and other families not have to learn the hard way so many things that I had to learn.
Yeah, wow, that was really well. And I think especially more like when you have to leave your home and start doing the family business, and the fact that when you get to leave, you live with a whole lot of things outside. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There
I'm
was
glad.
there were just so many things that in my own smaller family that I neglected to make better decisions for the entire family, and ultimately that didn't that that didn't yield the results that I was expecting it to. I mean, having to walk away from that from that business was one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make.
Yeah, it's fine. So you often talk about transferable value. What does that mean in simple terms for business owner?
Yeah. So many people think of business value, right? And frankly, many business owners don't even consider that until they're ready to exit their business. In fact, imagine if you own stocks, right? If you own assets, on any given day what that asset is worth. Your business should be ran the same way. You should know exactly what your business is worth on any given moment. And what people think that is, I'm going to go ahead and get a valuation done when I'm thinking about about that transition. But reality is getting a discounted cash flow model, getting a valuation done on your business is not the transferable value. The transferable value is what somebody is actually willing to pay for that business. And that transferable value takes into account soft things that are not usually factored into a discounted cash flow model, like how dependent on the business is it on the owner, whether there's the right systems in place, whether the right management in place is in place. Yeah, it'll look at cash flow, which is exactly what a normal valuation does. But if any investor is going to come into your business, they're going to look at how dependent on the decisions on the day-to-day perspective, the relationships, whether on the supply side or on the customer side, are on the owner, and they're going to discount the value that they're willing to pay based on those factors just because there's inherent risk. Right? Once they buy the business, owner walks away, and now they're left picking up those pieces. And so that risk is what owners are trying to mitigate, or what investors are trying to mitigate by discounting the price. And so many owners think that they're getting lowball offers, and so they get aggravated by what the market is telling them. But in reality, you need to switch that mindset. That if you're getting lowball offers, maybe that's what the market is telling you they're willing to pay for your business, and you have the power to change that. You have the power to put the right systems in place. You have the power to diversify your customer base. You have the power to do all of those as an owner, and that's what you should be focusing on, not getting offended by what the market is telling you.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. You have a whole lot to actually do different, not minding what the market told you. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So why is revenue growth alone not enough when building a valuable business?
Right, exactly. And frankly, I mean, this is how I was growing the business. The family business was I was focused specifically on top line. It's the easiest to measure, it's the easiest to see gratification, it's the easiest to be able to impact on a daily basis, right? If I make so many calls and get so many new clients, then revenue goes up, right? But in reality, there's a difference between scaling and growing. And growing is the revenue side, right? Imagine a cup, and the cup is going to have a water level, and the water level going up is revenue. Water level going down is loss in revenue. But the size of the cup is scaling. So if I want to grow my capacity to handle more, then I need to change the cup. Right? I need to get a 55-gallon drum or a lake. That capacity size is the scaling side. And as you focus on both, you can't focus on one without focusing on the other. You're able to create an asset that an investor is willing to actually come in. So many owners are just focusing on the revenue, but they're not focusing on the capacity of their business to do more. That's the big difference.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. As much as you're thinking about revenue, think about the capacity to do more and respect all the structures and everything put in place. Yeah,
Yep.
amazing. So what are the biggest mistake founder make when talking about selling or exiting their business?
I think the biggest mistake that founders make when they're thinking about that transition, and I say transition because it doesn't have to be a sale. It can be a transition to the kids. It can be a management buyout. It can be there's so many different options. But business owners believe that once they've built a business, they know what a transaction or a transition looks like. And those are very different things. It's very different to grow a business, and it's very different than to transition from the business. It requires a certain skill set. It requires knowing what not only the options are, but what the pros and cons of all the options. And so the biggest mistake I think that owners make is they look at them from the exact same lens as opposed to bringing in advisors who know the transition space really well and can help them understand to maximize the value of that asset. This is the largest transaction that many owners are going to have in their entire life. And so they feel like they can handle the intricacies on their own. In reality, you need an advisor team. You need not only a good CPA, which sometimes is different CPA than who has been managing your books
Yeah,
throughout the business's life. You need a good attorney. Again, it might not be your general counsel. It might be an attorney that's specific in M&A transactions. You need to have an advisor who's going to be the quarterback of understanding what the estate planning is going to be and what the tax minimization is going to be and so on and so forth. And so there's so much intricacy that's involved with the transition that owners need to be aware that it's so difficult to do that on your own.
I think being that is going to be the biggest deal they are going to do when it comes to selling and when it comes to doing some stuff. So having advisor, I think it's very, very key, being that they will not have to learn with their own business, being that a whole lot is at stake.
Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, amazing. So how can business owners scale without burning out their team or themselves?
Yeah, and to scale without burning out, you have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are
Mm,
and what your team's strengths and weaknesses are and find other team members or other partners to address the weaknesses that you have. And so, that means that you have to be vulnerable. That means that you have to set your pride aside. It's not about, it's not about you as the owner. It's about the team and the business and ensuring that it's putting its best foot forward. And maybe that means understanding what the current risks are and what the current threats are and making sure that is addressed by bringing the right people on. And there's going to be so much conversation of, well, I can't afford to bring on, somebody new. Yeah, that might be the case, is that you have a cash flow problem that needs to be addressed. But there are specific people who know how to address cash flow problems.
Yeah.
So if that's your problem, find somebody who knows how to solve that problem, use them as a means to address that problem, and then focus on the next problem. And so if your answer is, well, I can't hire somebody, then that's your first problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for actually giving us a lovely answer. In respect of that, yeah, know your strengths and know the strengths of your team. And yeah, I think this will just be good, because once you know their strengths, you'll be able to maximize them, but without micromanaging any persons and not necessarily more like burning anyone out in respect of what is not their strength.
Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So what the investor or buyer usually look for, or the founder of to ignore?
So investors want to mitigate risk. That's the name of the game from every decision that they're making. And they're looking at it from a very objective point of view. They're looking at it from a very unemotional point of view. And I think that that is the biggest disconnect between owners and investors, is owners have so much emotion tied into the business that they've built and that they've, put their heart and soul into, um, that when they start having these conversations with investors, it sounds so transactional. It sounds so cold. But in reality, an investor is looking at this from a deal by deal perspective, that they can look in any direction that they want to look. They can deploy their funds in any direction that they choose. And so why would they choose an asset that is extremely risky, in that it's owner dependent, in that it doesn't have the right systems, in that it doesn't have free cash flow, all of those things that can be conceived as risky. And so there is so much uninvested funds out there, and especially with the silver tsunami coming into play and the aging owner force, there's going to be so many transactions that are done and so many businesses that are left on the sidelines where they did not get a transaction. And unfortunately, that's the reality that a owner can control today. They can change their mindset. They can change the dynamic of the business to position it so that investors will look into it, will see value in it. And as an owner, they have the complete control, the driver's seat, to make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing. This is really amazing. So, what advice will you give to founders who want to build a business or that can eventually run themselves or without them?
Yeah, that's difficult. And as I was growing the family business, that was my whole goal, right? And that was a complete mind shift change from the family, was that I wanted to build the business so that it didn't need me, so that it could be autonomous, it could make its own decisions, it could scale whether I was there, whether I was not there. And that's a very difficult mindset to be in, because in some cases you have to let go. Some cases there's things that you cannot control if that's going to be the goal as you grow that business. And I think that that's the biggest shift that an owner that wants to scale in that capacity, is knowing that you cannot do everything. Knowing
Yeah.
that you have to trust the processes that you're building and trust the people that you've hired to do those responsibilities, or that you've partnered with, depending on what the structure is, and be okay with things that are not done the exact way that you want them to be.
Mm.
Obviously, that's understanding what the do's and don'ts are, and being very very clear about what the don'ts are, and making sure that the entire organization knows these are non-negotiables. We don't sacrifice our values. We don't sacrifice, if customer satisfaction is important to you, we don't sacrifice customer satisfaction. We don't being very clear about what is non-negotiable and what is acceptable to give a little bit, because everybody is going to have different decision making process. Everybody's going to have different ways of looking at the same problem, and so you have to understand that not everybody thinks the way that the owner thinks, and this is what I'm willing to sacrifice. But in all of that, I think that the main word to singularize everything is pride. There's so many owners that hold on to the pride that it's their baby, it's their business, that as opposed to it's the team's. Um, you know, there's so many people that talk about, especially in like the M&A space, brokers and individuals, advisors like that talk about the baby being ugly and having a hard time talking to the owner about their baby being ugly. I view this in a completely different way. I view it as the baby is still just a toddler, and our role as advisors is to help that toddler grow into an adolescent or grow into an adult, because as you raise your children, you want your children to make better decisions. And the only way to do that is to give them the right tools, to expose them to other ideas, expose them to the right people. And so if you think about a business being a baby, then let's find a way to mature that business into an adolescent or into an adult. And those are different commitment levels. It's different her time horizons. It's different amount of effort. And so an owner has to understand what their end goal is, because eventually they're going to have to exit their business. And are they willing to exit when it is just a baby? Are they willing to exit when it is a toddler, an adolescent, an adult? So on and so forth. So these are part of the decisions that an owner needs to make when they're setting off to build a scalable business.
Yeah, amazing. I think it just speaks volumes to a whole lot of things is attached here, and emotion has to be detached from it, being that. Yeah, as an owner, sometimes there's this love for what you have created, and when someone is going to run it, definitely there's going to be one or two change that's going to, despite the non-negotiables, there's still going to be some little influence here and there, and they just speak
Right.
volume. Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. So, Brandon, for my audience who want to learn more about you, who want to further this discussion, who want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you, and where is the best platform?
Yeah, so our website's a great place to visit. We have different content on there, so people can be exposed to how we think, how we view business. We talk about a lot of different things on our website. So tdpineadvisors.com is a great place to go. And then also LinkedIn is the platform that we spend most of our efforts on. And so Brandon Moon is my LinkedIn profile, and happy to connect with anybody who wants to talk about business. I love connecting with people, and I love sharing just my thoughts and bouncing ideas off of people.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. Thank you for sharing your experience and insight on beauty business with clarity and long-term value. Listener, you can actually learn more about Brandon's work and resources. The link is going to be on the show notes of his website, and viewers will reach out to him. This has been the Making of Me podcast, and it's really a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Have a great day.